I had $5,000 and a beat up Astro van, and I started from scratch. Moved to selling my company in 5 years to a Fortune 300 company. And I had to admit that I had really screwed some things up and made $1 million mistake. I already sold the business, right? Successful business. I'm learning a lesson that I should have already known.
Mm.
You can never, as an entrepreneur, let go of the financial ownership of your business. The only way I'm going to quit doing this is get rid of those tools. Then I didn't have the option, right? That was my form of burning my own ship. So I gave all my tools away because I made some real mistakes and I assumed that it's simple and it's easy. Starting and running a business is simple if you keep it to the basics, but it's not easy. I had
Hey there, and welcome to From the Ground Up Show, the show where we encourage and inspire the next generation of free-thinking leaders by telling the stories of those that have been there, done that, and are still getting it done, building a life that they love with their hearts, their hands, and their hustle. I'm your host, Eric Loden. If you guys could do me a favor, pause the show right now, share it with a friend or a colleague that might benefit. Make sure you like, share, follow, and subscribe, all the things on your favorite podcast platform, YouTube, and social media. If you have a moment, please leave us a 5-star review or leave a comment on your favorite podcast platform. That is really huge in getting the content out there so that more people can learn and listen and benefit. And if you're looking for a new hat, t-shirt, playing cards, or even placemats or a rug for your office, check out our merch store. It's shop.fromthegroundupshow.com. We have all the regular things and a few unique items in there that are kind of fun. So today, I'm excited. I think this is going to be a fun conversation. I am joined by Brent Garrett. Brent is the president of Sirius Plumbing and Air Conditioning, the creator of the Best Business Program, and author of 30 Days to a Better Business. Brent started his career with $5,000 in a beat-up truck and has built that into a very successful business. He spent a few years trying to wrangle his business into shape with hectic effort before getting serious about building systems, discipline, and true leadership. Now he shares those secrets with others through his writing, speaking, and coaching. So, Brent, thanks for joining us today.
Eric, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. I know you sent me a copy of your book. I got to read through a little bit, and we've communicated a little bit in the run up to this recording. You just have a wealth of knowledge and experience and some great stories. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Appreciate it. You make 61 sound a lot better than it probably should.
Well, you look good for 61, and you got a lot going on. We'll dive into all your business ventures and everything you're doing, but we like to start every show just getting to know you a little bit and, what kind of a upbringing, what kind of a history produces someone that does the things that you've done. So do you mind going back clear to the beginning and telling us a little bit about your childhood and what things were like growing up?
Yeah, sure. I was born in the Midwest, Illinois, and better part of the first 14 years were spent there. My dad was a Korean War veteran and had a scholarship, football scholarship, to go to the University of Missouri, but he was also a reservist, even in senior in high school. And so at 17, he went to Korea and came back and went to work, started a family and worked at the local hammer factory in Bushnell, Illinois. And don't even try to Google it. It may not show up on the map. It's a small place. But he was an apprentice plumber on the weekends to make extra money. That our family, we came from humble beginnings. And so, there's three ways you get into the plumbing and air conditioning business. You either marry into it, you're born into it, like I was, or you had a buddy who needed a strong back and a weak mind, and you never left the business. So my dad was that latter part, and he, really worked hard and kind of was one of those, like about 80% of the business today, 2, 3 trucks, right? Never scaled his business, but man, put 4 kids through college. And my start in the plumbing business started on the end of a shovel at 12. And and I'm gonna fast forward through some more of this, but he was so committed to us going to college. I was a first generation graduate, got a degree in marketing and accounting, and I broke my dad's heart when I told him that I wanted to start my own plumbing and air conditioning business. And I made him the promise that I would go to work for a life insurance company because he told me if I was going to start a business, if I could learn how to sell first, and anybody out there that's ever sold life insurance, let me tell you what, that is some hard, tough lessons. And I really enjoyed it. It was the best advice he ever gave me. I went to work for New York Life. After that, I I had a 50-page business plan and $5,000. And you're right, a beat up Astro van in Richardson, Texas. And I started that from scratch. 5 years later, I know you're a big reader, Eric. I read The E Myth by Michael Gerber
Mm-hmm.
and Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And those two books helped me move to selling my company in 5 years to a Fortune 300 company. And man, I got so much experience at ServiceMaster on how to get some corporate polish and communicate a little better. And I got hired away by a headhunting firm and became the CEO and president of a regional company in Memphis, Tennessee called Ledick Management Group. They were a multifamily fee-based manager. And from there, I went right back into private ownership, started another company here in Dallas from scratch again. And we raised our kids. I did a little keynote speaking workshop training. And if you read my book, you'll learn quickly that I got hit with some really tough life questions. And I chose family first and got off the road, quit teaching and coaching and keynote speaking. And Jenny and I have worked together. That's my wife for over 20 years. And she and I are working on another book called 30 Days to a Better Marriage that
Okay.
works. We have worked together, and I mean she is my true partner in many, many different senses of the word. But we work together, and there's a lot to learn on that. And there are a lot of small businesses out there that out of necessity work together, and so we're working on that. But I said that if I ever got back into coaching and writing and keynote speaking, I wouldn't do it just for the money. So what I am doing is I'm coaching a small community of skilled trades owners who want to grow and scale their business without compromising their values. And so that's what I'm doing now. Just right on that other side of that wall are 30 employees here in Dallas, Texas, in this hot weather, taking care of people in their homes. And my son is over there working and learning and growing and helping with the business. It's just a blast to watch them do well. I don't own a job, I own a business, and I coach the coaches. So
That's
I hope
awesome.
that got the summary. I like to give a 40-second answer. It's hard to go from when I was born to 61 in 40 seconds. So
Man, good stuff. And I like that distinction. You own a business instead of a job. I think, especially in the skilled trades, there's a lot of people that kind of get trapped in the later. So when I was roofing and working in the hot sun every day, I would sweat a lot, and my clothes never really got clean. They were left stiff and uncomfortable with residue from the detergents we tried, and the smell came back almost immediately if you started to sweat again. Most detergents don't actually break down and rinse out sweat. They mask it with strong fragrances. So I'm excited to tell you about my new partner, Athlete Fresh. Athlete Fresh dives deep into fabrics to actually break down sweat and the enzymes that cause that smell. It rinses clean every time. Athlete Fresh will actually rinse out the residue left by other detergents. Bring new life to your work clothes or athletic gear. Check out Athlete Fresh and remember what it feels like to smell fresh. AthleteFresh.shop/from the ground up show. Again, that is AthleteFresh.shop/from the ground up show. Well, let's move into that a little bit. You said your first business that you started, you took it from a startup to selling out to a Fortune 300 company in 5 years. What did that look like? What was the process? How did you get started?
Yeah, well, I think after about 6 months, I was out of the truck, and I moved quickly into that. I think there are 5 stages of scaling a business. I moved quickly into that teaming phase is what I call it, where you're bringing on team members and you're taking hats off, and that's really that first level for a business owner to think about who, not do, and so that's really tough for some folks. What I wanted to get out of the truck. I had a vision for where I was growing the business, and so at that phase, we clicked along for a couple years. I told you I read Michael Gerber's book, The E Myth, and he talks a lot about process, and we worked a lot on process. And here we are in the age of AI, and that was like in the mid '90s. So a lot of my competitors or people that were in the business, they didn't even have a PC. And, so we bought our first computer. I remember like the first year, I remember when we first started running calls, Eric, I don't know how old you are. Do you remember thermal fax paper?
I do, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
W
So
we're a little behind the curve here in Wyoming, and, we were still doing business by fax when I got started in the
yeah.
industry, so
So, we were scheduling calls with thumbtacks on a cork board and had Monday, Tuesday through Saturday. And those thermal fax papers where we would get calls from a home warranty company was a big part of our growth initiative. But we were pencil and paper for a long time. And then so grew a relationship with those folks from American Home Shield. They were owned by a company called ServiceMaster. And so they came and approached me about buying the business. And I joined their executive team there and worked there for 2 or 3 years. We did a roll up of the plumbing and air conditioning industry, about a $500 million roll up. And I did mergers and acquisitions, leaned a lot on my finance and accounting background. And it was just a great experience. I learned a lot. There was a gentleman named Bill Pollard at that time who was the CEO of ServiceMaster. And they were a publicly traded company with a heart, a purpose, and a vision. And it just really rang true with me. And I learned a lot with my days at ServiceMaster.
yeah. So I've got a couple questions there, just about that business startup, but, while we're on the topic, I mean, 5 years is a pretty short time to have built a business to get somebody's attention like that, and especially to be kinda on the front end of a big roll up. What was special about what you had built that got people's attention and kinda put you in that place to help initiate that roll up and be part of that process?
I think number one was I was always reading a lot, learning a lot, and I was very focused on the client experience. I told you that I came from the Midwest and I grew up in a small town, and I was in the Dallas area. Richardson's in Dallas, and I just brought a small town client experience, customer service approach. And we grew our business not through a lot of marketing tactics, but through referral. I got to tell you, I am a reader, but the best business book I've ever read in my life was The Tortoise and the Hare. Slow and steady wins the race. And
Amen.
so I brought a small town approach. We still do. We spend significantly less on marketing than my competitors. On the average, we spend somewhere between 4 and 7% of total revenue in marketing. The industry average is about 15 to 30% for growth companies. And so, there's a really good accounting lesson in that too.
Yeah.
And when I work with our clients, my value proposition to them is the fee you pay me is about 20% of what I'll save you in marketing dollars. And so it's a philosophy. In the Midwest, we say that you can shear a sheep about 3 times a year. You can only skin it once. And our philosophy is repeat customers and reoccurring revenue, and slow and steady wins the race. Well, you know what? When you're in a major metropolitan area and you do that, it's a little unique at times. I have no judgment about other people's business models, but it did accelerate our growth. I was open to selling not so much because of the money that I got for the sale, but I needed some polish. I needed some experience in scaling and communicating and managing and HR, and Service Master did that for me.
Okay.
And so we probably could have just kept growing the business, but I wouldn't have developed. And that's one of the things I tell young people that are in a job. And I tell my kids are 26 and 29. They're young adults doing great. And when they got out of college, I said, never take a job for the money. Take the job for what you can learn. And then the second one is not mine, guy named Jim Rohn. He's not with us anymore. He passed away. But he said, work on yourself harder than you do your job.
Mm,
And so if I those are my first two little nuggets that I would throw out to your listeners from a 61-year-old guy. Work on yourself harder than do your job, and take a job or work for what you can learn, especially in the first 10 years.
yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, those are great little nuggets. You mentioned, you started your business, you kind of had a vision for growing it. You wanted to get out of the truck and you talked about that process. I think that's something that's difficult for a lot of business owners and especially those that are moving from kind of a practitioner to a business owner. How do you fill those roles when you're in that teaming process? I interview a lot of business owners, and some of them say that they hired too fast and had too much burden on payroll and couldn't keep up. And others say that they hung on too long and were unwilling to let go, and that limited their scale. How do you know when is the right time to hire that next role, bring on that next person? How do you find that balance?
Yeah, I think first of all, the leader owner mindset has to be a shift to who, not do. Okay. Everything that makes you successful in that solopreneur to first couple of team members is that you're resilient, you're independent, you're hardworking, you're driven. Okay. And you're an individual and you derive a lot of identity from what you do. Okay. Well, what gets you past into that next level, everything that got you there can keep you from moving to that next level, right? So the first thing you have to say is, look, I'm wearing a lot of different hats. This is what I work with folks in. Which hat do you not like the most? And then and I think that's a little bit of the E Myth and all these books I've read, but let's get that hat off that you don't even like doing. Okay. And they're all ears. Well, here's the next phase. I'm gonna tell you a story that what I had to do in that to make that happen. And you do things and you don't even realize it. And I want to share with you, I've lived every one of these phases. And I want to say to your listeners, I have been inches from bankruptcy and I've had commas next to my net worth. And thank goodness I haven't been close to bankruptcy in quite a while. But I'm telling you, there are these little lessons at each phase. I found myself in the office with folks out, but every time there was a problem, I still had a truck with tools and that, man, I would go out and fix it. And I started to realize, hey, you know what? I have to take away the ability to do that to force me. And this may not work for everybody, but to force me to help get the team to take care of the problem. Because let me tell you what, in business, we're all going to have problems. I guarantee you, I've got 3 different problems right now in this business, and there's some adversity around it. The one promise I can make is we're all going to have problems, right? So, what you need to be as a business owner is a problem solver. And don't worry about all of them. Pick the right one, right? Well, what it resulted in, Eric, was me looking and going, you know what? The only way I'm going to quit doing this is to put somebody else in that truck and get rid of those tools. Then I didn't have the option, right? I think you've heard maybe the stories about leaders and ships meet at medieval wars where, the leaders would land and burn the ships, right? There's no option to go back. Well, that was my form of burning my own ship. So I gave all my tools away. And that hopefully is a metaphor for when you're at different phases. Number one, let's replace the hat that doesn't fit well. And let's get rid of the things that would cause us to run to and fix the problem. That forces us to work with a team and say, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to work with who is going to do that. And then that's a whole different little bullet point list on how do you effectively manage and lead. And that's when I started to realize that, man, I needed some training in that. And that's really what I learned at ServiceMaster. Was I was realizing that I could learn a lot more about how to lead and manage people. So I took a job and got paid to get trained about how to kind of round out these gaps. And so I hope I answered your question. But sometimes you got to burn the ships. Sometimes you got to give your tools away. But it's real easy to get rid of the hats that you don't enjoy, and that's really what scaling is about. And you get to a certain point, you get really excited about it. You go, wait a minute. I don't own a job anymore. I own a business and I'm doing what I love, and everybody else is doing the stuff I don't love to do. And here's the really cool thing. There are people in the world, if you can just grab that and understand, you know, the creator of this world, none of us all can do it all. The joy is there's somebody else that loves to do what you don't love doing, and you build a good team. It's a lot of fun when you come to the office.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I can relate to a lot of that. I was the guy that kept tools in my truck for way too long, and when a fire started, I was the first one to grab the fire extinguisher and jump in, and that was probably a detriment to our growth for a while. And once I quit doing that, just like you said, that's when it got to be a little more fun. I got to be exciting to manage an organization and own a business rather than a job.
Sometimes it'll save a marriage too.
Yeah, that's true.
I want to take a moment to tell you about this episode's sponsor, MacArthur Company. As a former contractor, I know the importance of working with a great team. That team includes more than your employees. You need what you need on time and at the right location. Competitive pricing sure helps too. A good relationship with your supplier can make a huge difference. That is why I always use MacArthur Company. At MacArthur, you are more than just a number. You are a person, a customer, and a friend. With branches throughout the United States, MacArthur is big enough to handle your most demanding needs, but they do it with small-town service. MacArthur isn't another big box store run by a board answering to stockholders. They are employee-owned, making them one of the last independent suppliers, serving all of your commercial, industrial, and residential building envelope needs. Whether you're doing roofing, insulation, HVAC, or siding, MacArthur has you covered with great service and a personal touch. If great service and good pricing don't win you over, make sure you check out their customer incentive program, where every purchase earns points towards a free vacation. I am already packing for my next MacArthur incentive trip. Call or check online to find your nearest MacArthur warehouse so you too can enjoy superior service and start earning points towards your next vacation. Get what you need, when and where you need it. All the service without the hassle. MacArthurCode.com.
I know you mentioned, starting your business when things were still run by fax and buying your first computer there in your first year of business. You've run service businesses through the tech revolution. Oh, what is your stance on that now? Are you an early adopter? Do you kind of wait for proven systems? Are you one of the guys that hangs on to legacy systems and waits until you have to upgrade? What's your approach to tech in a service business?
I've always leaned in on that. And I think, but the computer's never going to fix the leak. So let's talk about how we use technology and what problem are we solving with it, and never misunderstand that the magic moment, at least in my business, is when our technician is in front of the customer and that magic moment's taking place where they're solving problems for our clients and customers. So technology has always been something that is solving a problem, number one, not because it's really cool. And I break down technology into there's bleeding edge technology and there's leading edge technology. And we try to stay right around maybe a year behind leading edge technology. And that's for us in our industry. If I'm a year, what I always found, and I've found through the last 30 years, if I'm a year behind leading edge technology, I'm about 5 years ahead of my industry. Now, there are industry segments where, gosh, if you're not right behind or on the wave of bleeding edge technology, you may get wiped out. I get that. I have the luxury of being ahead of my industry by being just a little bit behind what I call leading edge technology. So, what's that look like? About 2 or 3 years ago, we moved from a Microsoft environment to a cloud based. Well, cloud been with us for a while, but we moved to Google Suites and we kind of stayed in that environment. That obviously led us a year or two ago to be a part of Gemini, which is, pick your flavor, Chat GPT or Gemini or whatever and that's back when we were probably a year behind the AI craze. A Google platform's going to be pretty up to date.
Yeah.
So, 2 or 3 years ago, we were getting better at writing our emails, a little better at process. We looked a little smarter. We looked like we made better grades in English class, and it was speeding things up, and our research got quicker, right? And so here in the last 6 months, we're starting to use AI agents,
Okay.
and we're exploring codecs and creating our own applications, but we're a little cautious. There's quite a bit of talk. We're a VoIP system on the phones. Quite a bit of talk right now about bots and how we use them and how they learn from our voice phone calls, that learns what's our culture, that kind of thing. And so I'm now the strategy guy in the company I have just had a conversation about 2 hours ago, and somebody said, "Hey, we can have this up and running by tomorrow." I said, "Hey, whoa, tap on the brakes there. Let's look at this. Let's talk about what problem we're solving. It's not an if, but when." So I feel like we've stayed there with technology in our lane and maybe in roofing. There are a lot of things that are consolidating, a lot of neat things going on with technology. We shouldn't be spooked by it. A lot of my clients are a little just spooked by it, or, hey, is this really going to put me out of a job? And, those kinds of questions. So my philosophy is stay just about a year behind leading edge technology.
I like it. I think.
But by the way, bleeding's not good.
No.
Bleeding's expensive.
Yes.
And it's still in what I would call a beta test.
Yeah.
Okay.
You spend
Yeah,
3
why don't we
times as
just
much
get the
for something to
research?
find out that you bought the wrong one.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Man, good stuff. Yeah, I can relate to a lot of that. I love the focus on solving problems. That was a big part of the DNA that I tried to build into our company. I made a kind of a personal rule a couple years ago that I don't buy anything that solves a problem I didn't know I had.
Yeah, exactly.
If you call me selling something, I'm not buying. When I have a problem, I
you know
find
what?
a solution instead of hearing about a solution to realize I had a problem. So
I gave you a couple nuggets a few minutes ago. Let me give your listeners something. I'll give you a real practical use is we use Notebook LM. Okay. Because what I'm trying to do is get our coaches to be better trainers. And so Notebook LM, introduced it to them, and it'll take, let's say, a document that's either a checklist or some process you want to teach your technicians or office folks. And it will take that script or that information that you might speak from, and it'll turn it into a deck for you that you can train and speak from. So you're working maybe with a field leader who's a little uncomfortable anyway about doing training. It's a form of public speaking. There's an example of how to make that a little more entertaining, a little more attractive to the eye, and maybe a little easier for somebody to communicate things. That's one real practical way that we're using AI and technology. You can download it. It's free.
That's the best kind. So-
Yeah.
Well, I know you built a successful company, scaled and sold in 5 years, and then you spent a portion of your career in M&A, kind of rolling up similar companies. What types of things make a company most appealing for acquisition?
Man, that's a great question. And I will tell you there are two or three things that I think, yeah, I can just speak in our industry, okay? Let me give you some data points here. The residential skilled trade plumbing and air conditioning market potential or annual revenue is somewhere around $120 billion a year. Okay. And so some pretty interesting facts. 15% of those contractors are controlling about 60% of that 120 billion. The other 80 to 85% are doing things that the 15% are. Okay. And so, and I'm getting to your question, and that is that there's a huge equity roll up in my industry, but they're only interested in that 15%. Interesting enough, right now, the equity game, and none of them have 1% of the market share, right? It's still crazy fragmented, but of that 15%, that they own about 30% of it. And we could talk for another 2 hours about equity, and I know you don't want to do that. So, but to your point, let me just tell you what the things are that the 80% aren't doing that the 15 are. And I will tell you that the 15%, what they're doing are the things that you need to do to get your company in a best situation. Then I'll talk about what team I would put around you and some of the mistakes I made when I sold my company. So of that 80% are 1.5 million or less. The average is about 400,000 a year in revenue. So those contractors, we're going to talk about role pricing, inventory, time, compensation, and marketing. Okay. And this is what they're doing. We already talked about it. They're doing, they're not whoing. And I've heard say it's not my take, but think like an owl. Okay. Who, not do. Okay. On pricing, they're usually charging for time and material, and their average gross margin is 35 to 45%. And their inventory, they're making a lot of trips to supply house. They're billing about 20 to 25%, or sorry, 20 to 25 hours of a 40-hour week. We can talk more about that one and dive into it. The other one is the time. It's open-ended schedules instead of using what is Parkinson's law. We can talk about that more. But if I give you 2 jobs, Eric, and your job's to work 8 hours a day, I know I'm speaking to a roofing guy here. How long do you think it's going to take you to do those 2 jobs?
8 hours.
Yeah. If I give you 5 and you've got to make your daughter's dance recital by 5:30 and you have 5 calls to do and you know it, how long is it going to take you to do those?
I'm going to get it done in about 4.5.
Yeah. Or at least 8, right? We have to compress time. Those 80% contractors aren't doing that. And a lot of that's because they're still doing so much, they don't realize it, and they're not managing their team as efficiently as they could. Compensation, I think we already know that. I don't want to say the word clock milking, but that's really what's going on there.
Yeah.
And so marketing is word of mouth reliance. So let's talk about what those 15% companies are doing that are controlling 60% of the total market share. They delegate leadership. They are on a flat rate platform that's somewhere between 50 and 55%. There are companies out there charging 60 and 70%. That would be the skin it once thing. You're shear it 3 times a year. You know, you can fool some of the people some of the time. They're just not going to call you back. I mean, I just know that from experience. They have a rolling warehouse on their trucks. Their trucks are stocked. It's a one-stop repair. They're time boxed, which means that, Eric, glad to be here. Love to talk about all those repairs. The problem I have here is that you have a stoppage in your home, and I'm here to take care of that. Let me go diagnose that. I've got 5 calls today. Okay. We can certainly take care of some of those things that aren't as pressing, but I want to get this taken care of. Now the customer's working with you within the time frame to fix the problem they asked you for.
Mm-hmm.
It also mitigates their impression that you're there to upsell them all day long and camp out in their home. That's a strategy for some companies. That's not one for us. They're performance driven. They are getting paid either by the job or they're being paid and incentivized to be efficient on completed calls, maximizing, communicating, surveys with the customer, and then marketing. They're consistently spending somewhere between 8 and 12%. So, two more things. One is they have a consistent and an accurate ability to provide somebody with 3 years financials. I'm put my accounting hat on now. That's balance sheet, P&L, not so much cash flow, but you need to be able to show that potential purchaser of your business, number one, what's your growth rate? How confident am I on the accuracy of your financials? Because that's how they're going to value your business.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the X factor. If you own the business and don't run the business, they're going to pay you more money for it because it runs without you have systems and processes in place. So those last 5 or 6 things I just talked about. Now, the one thing that you didn't ask me is, well, how do you build a team? If you want to go sell a business, you will save the fee that you pay a business broker to negotiate on your behalf because guess what? The equity players do this every day and they've done it all their life and they're the sharpest people in the business environment. You're going to do it once. A business broker knows how to communicate on your behalf and represents your interest.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So,
I mean,
so that's the first one. A really good closing attorney, a really good CPA. And then the third one is this is the one I didn't have around the table that I should have. I sold the business in 99. And if anybody knows about that environment, I sold it for about 80% stock and 20% cash. Guess what happened to the market in 99?
Yeah.
Right? I should have had a financial advisor around the table. I would have collared that stock and protected my investment. I didn't know what a collared stock was. I do now and wish I had known then.
Yeah. Good stuff.
There's number 3. So I hope I answered your question, but those are the things I would do if you're preparing that. If you don't have those in place, get with a business coach and start working your business to a point and get it ready for sale.
There's good stuff there. And I didn't necessarily do it with any foresight or any education or knowledge, but you hit so many of kind of my core values in the way I ran my business there. I gave talks to my crew about Parkinson's law probably once a week.
I'm impressed that you know Parkinson's law.
I was talking about Parkinson's law before I knew that was what it was called. I had read the study. I think it was Harvard did the study that resulted in Parkinson's law. I had read that study and would talk about it all the time. And I had been talking about it for probably a decade before I realized it had a name.
Yeah,
But,
I really shouldn't be surprised because I looked at your reading list or your book list on your website. You are a leader who reads, and you probably are going to run into that. But it works, right?
Man, yeah.
Hey, anybody out there listening, if you run a company, just do this for a week. If you give somebody a task, say, look, I need to hear back from you in 15 minutes on this. And if they look at you like 15 minutes, okay, 30 minutes. Is 30 minutes okay? I'll be back to check with you. Watch how fast it gets done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've only scaled and sold one business, and I didn't know what I was doing most of the time I was running it, but those few tips you gave there just nailed everything that I learned through that process. And even the business broker, when we went to sell our business, I heard it said a long time ago. It's been something that I always listen to. Is I heard it as an analogy to a poker game. In every game, there's a sucker. And if you don't know who it is, it's probably you. And I think it's true for negotiations as well. So if you don't feel like you're in the power seat in a negotiation, someone's probably taking advantage of you, and you need to build that team. You need to have advice. You need experience around you to make sure that you're being protected and taken care of.
If you're wondering how I had that list in my head, I was about ready to send out another broadcast to podcast hosts, and the topic is what to do with your business or what to know before you sell it.
Yeah.
And so I'm not that good. It's just was fresh on my brain. It's a great question. Didn't know that one was coming, but it's on everybody's mind right now.
Well, you mentioned that you kind of disappointed your dad starting a plumbing and air conditioning business. What was it that attracted you to that business? Why did you decide to go all in as an entrepreneur to build your own business instead of using your education and going into another field?
Yeah, I think number one, I already knew the business, so to speak. I knew I wanted to start my own business. Being an entrepreneur is a life sentence. That's what Dan Sullivan says, and I agree with him. I was a quarterback in college. Once you play the position quarterback, it's just not as much fun to go play wideout, right? You'd rather be throwing the ball than catching it. Okay. Well, it being an entrepreneur, if it's in your bones, it's with you forever, no matter. That's why people will fail 5 times to succeed. It's in their blood. Okay. So I knew I wanted to start a business. I already knew a little bit about the business, but I told you I got a marketing and accounting degree. Marketing, I had a great senior level instructor said, look, one of the best things you can remember in marketing is if everybody's doing this, do something that makes you look different, right? Well, when I looked at the plumbing and air conditioning business, there weren't a lot of, and I think I was kidding you when we did the warm up that on my notes. At the time in the 90s, I was an unconventional career transformer, but I wasn't a Gen Z. I was a Gen X. Okay. I just saw a space that had so much opportunity and it had really favorable net income or profit margins in comparison to other business models. I went, hey, wait a minute. Everybody's being a computer programmer, or they're doing this, or they're going to work for corporate. I think I'm going to do this. And as you know, what is it? The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost.
Yep.
I took the road less traveled, and that made all the difference. I just took a path that wasn't as traveled because I saw less competition, in my opinion.
Yeah. Good stuff.
My dad did not see that.
I picked it up from a like tactical book, not a business book, but again, a quote I love is when everybody else is looking left and right, you better be looking up and down.
Well, as a quarterback, remember there's somebody back behind you running after you too. You might not want to stop. You might get run over too, right? We're both saying the same thing.
Good stuff. So you've built two successful businesses from the ground up in kind of this plumbing and HVAC sector. What was the most difficult step in building those businesses?
You know, the first one was so new to me and things happen so fast that I think I want to focus in on the second one because I made some real mistakes and I assumed that it's simple and it's easy. Okay. Starting and running a business is simple if you keep it to the basics, but it's not easy. And the second one I started, I made $1 million mistake. I was out on the road speaking, keynote speaking, and workshop training on Tuesday through Thursday. And I said, oh, this is easy. I'm just going to hire a team of people, fund it with money, and let it run. And I can do this. And I kind of watched it on Monday and Friday. I'll get to the 2 lessons I learned all this. 2 more nuggets coming after this one, but it was 6 months to the day last time I had checked some financials. I'd looked at bank accounts. It wasn't like we weren't watching the financials, but not to the level of looking at it every day. Okay. I come home, Eric, on a Friday, and I write about this in my book. because I want your listeners to understand I have failed so many ways and so many different types of mistakes, right? I'm I'm thinking life's great and I'm on the road 120 days a year and there's some trappings about speaking and you start to believe your own press clippings and it's I learned a lot of lessons there. But the lights go out in the office and I'm in Texas, it's summer. We have brownouts and blackouts. We have electrical flow issues. I'm going, well, there must be something going on. I go next door and my neighbor's lights are just fine. We were late on paying our electric bill. I had an accountant person handling the accounting, not an accountant, that went past. And it was a wake up call for me. This is what I want to share with you, though, because this is the toughest lesson I learned. I had already been going through, my kids were 4 and 6 then. It was bothering me being on the road. Something was tugging at me that wasn't about business, that my life wasn't in balance. And I took a stack home and like we were $1 million in debt. This company was bankrupt. But emotionally and spiritually, I think I was reaching a bankruptcy that I didn't know.
Mm.
And so I looked through that. I had lunch with Jenny the next day, my business partner. I said, look, I don't know how to tell you this, but we're in a deep hole. And I don't know that we've been wiped out personally, but that business was on a final thread. And we had a real heart to heart. And I said, I really, this is a wake up call for me. I want to get off the road. I was saying goodbye to a really nice income. But I said, I got to get my life in order. This business, I don't know if I can save it or not, but we're going to give it a good try. And we did save it. But I'm going to tell you, sometimes things happen in your life. We're talking a lot about business and how we make our living and how we pay our bills, but there's a much bigger game being played in our lives. And that's the choices we make about what matters. That business nearing bankruptcy and those lights going off were a metaphor for me to turn a different light on. And that was a light that I knew was always in my life that I had made a commitment to years ago. And what I would say about that, it was my toughest lesson to learn in business, but it saved my life. So, here I am at 61. I was 41. But here was the other piece. There's a lot of pride involved in the business and I had to admit that I had really screwed some things up. The 2 lessons that I learned from that is number 1, and then an interesting, I already sold the business, right? Successful business. I'm learning a lesson that I should have already known. You can never, as an entrepreneur, let go of the financial ownership of your business. It's the failure for most, and most companies after 5 years will be out of business. And a lot of it is because of just poor cash management. And there I was at 41 looking and going, how could you, an accountant, an accounting background, successful business soul, be in this position? It was pride. It was pride and ignorance and what I call willful ignorance, because I knew what to do. I just didn't do it. The second one is, and I hope we get to talk about this a little bit. You can never delegate the culture of your business. You set the rules, you set the tone, you set how we're going to go to market, you set how we're going to treat each other, because that's what ultimately allows you to scale and grow your business. Because if people don't know how they're supposed to do their job, and here's more importantly, why. Our why in our business is to make lives better. What we do is plumbing and air conditioning. But our why is to make lives better for our team first, our customers second, and our vendors third. So I never delegate the responsibility of the financials, and I never delegate the culture. And that's why that company almost went bankrupt, is because I took my eye off that. So that's the biggest lesson I learned. That was a tough one. And we saved it through sales. because sales covers a multitude of sins. And man, I had about 1,000,000 sins at that point.
Good stuff, man. I think you and I would get along really well running a business together. We're pretty aligned on a lot of these things. I know that I interview a lot of business owners, and I hear again and again and again, know your numbers, know your numbers, know your numbers, stay on top of accounting. And that was the one thing I was never willing to let go of in my own business. Doing M&A, the
Yeah.
quality of earnings report is a big deal. And I didn't know that you could do that deep of a dive into someone's accounting until I went through it. But when we were negotiating with a couple different firms and looking at the buyout, what I estimated the result of our quality of earnings to be was like 2% off of what the accounting firm came up with after spending 3 months and $300,000 investigating our accounting. I had it down almost exactly what they came up with. Did you got to know your numbers. You got to know where you're at.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely.
Yeah. Good stuff. When were you most afraid? You just talked about realizing you were $1 million
I
in
think I was
debt.
pretty
Is
afraid
that,
right then.
yeah.
I will tell you, you know, it's something that is with most small business owners or entrepreneurs. They have two problems that they may or may not be aware of, but the two problems that are with them is liquidity. How do you get your money out of your business? And the second is exit strategy. Are you going to sell it? You're going to pass it on? You're going to sell it to your employees? Or you're just going to close the doors up? They usually don't think and plan for that. But there are other problems that we're always going to have in business. I tend to say this, and I mean it. I'm a little scared somebody will misinterpret me saying this. But because of my accounting background, if I don't have cash problems, my money's not working hard enough for me. Okay. And so one of the things that's with most small business owners is that liquidity thing. Okay. Is managing cash, managing payroll, those types of things. But I have solid financials and I know, and I talk to my clients about this. You got to know what a quick ratio is on the balance sheet. Got to know what your current ratio is. And then there's an acid test ratio, and acid test is really telling you what's going on. And that's all about how much cash do I have to meet my future obligations or payables. Now, I'll get out of the technical, but that's something that's with my clients that I see is most of what causes them pain. The cure for that is to know your financials. So those are the day-to-day things, what are we going to do to move money here or there? If you get to owning a business, then your planning should be, how do I have these emergency account funds? Because problems are going to happen, unexpected things are going to happen. That's going to bring peace of mind and make you more strategic about your decisions. But then there's that extra level of how am I going to build a legacy? What types of things do we want to give back to? What are we going to do with our resources? What can we do for our team to strengthen them? How do we take our key team members and take the option away that they will ever leave the company because somebody might entice them away for another couple bucks, right? These are strategy things that free up your brain, but they are things that can cause you a lot of pain. You lose a key employee that's been with you for 10 years. They know everything about your business. Guess what? You're back doing their job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of bench strength you're growing. So I think those are some of the common daily problems that are always there.
Yeah. Do you have any silver bullet advice there for taking care of that team and making sure that you build a culture and environment and incentive package that causes them to stay?
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up because let me tell you what, AI, I used to be so intimidated by the interview process when somebody would say, well, and I was like, man, I want this guy on our team or this person in the office. This is who I want. And they say, well, I was making this over there and I want 20% over that. And okay, how do I come back with that? Because I knew it was a kind of a card trading kind of conversation. Here's my nugget. AI is a great tool. And one of the things I use, I put in, what's the average compensation in Dallas Fort Worth for a residential licensed plumber in residential service? Could you also please provide a standard or typical job description for that? Boom. I mean, it's 30 seconds, right? And so now when somebody says, hey, I'm making 120 over here, well, you know what? I'm fine with doing that. You sound like you can do the job. It doesn't scare me, but the average compensation for a licensed plumber in Dallas, Texas, doing what we do is $60,000 a year or $65,000 a year. They slump down in the chair a little bit. And now you have a real conversation. What I say is number one, pay bases that are commensurate. That's an $8 word for comparable to others. Okay. Pay a base there, or maybe in the first 30 days, you say, man, I really want to bring you on. Our standard environment, you already know we've got the business. We can do this. We can provide these things. Here's the benefits package. But it's just standard. First 30 days, we pay 10% less than the base. And if you're there, we'll pay you 20% off your starting. So we'll give you a 10% bump in 30 days if you can do the job. And oh, by the way, we'll also put a monthly bonus if you do these things. And that's when you talk to them about your culture statement. I usually have one on my desk. I would hold it up. I don't have it right now. But here's the culture statement. And guess what? All you have to do are these 4 things for the first 30 days. You have to show up on time, do what you say you're going to do, follow through, say please and thank you. And the reason that is that you need to build trust in us. I promise you we'll do those 4 things. If you'll do those 4 things, we'll bump you up. And then your bonus structure will be for the value you create in the business. And when that's how we get to that 120 number. Here's what happens. The person that knows they can do that, they already want to be a part of your culture or not. And they go, yeah, I'll do that. I'll take that. Or they'll counter and say, hey, how about if I take that deal, but I've got to have this? Okay, that's great. Now we're at a 65 number. We're not a 120 number. Okay, don't get suckered into a bad deal. But our philosophy is we're going to pay a base or slightly higher than the base, but you got to show us you can do all these things you said you can on your resume. Sometimes it doesn't always work out, Eric. You know that from your experience. So we put a win-win compensation agreement, and we put it in writing, not as a contract because we're an at-will employee state, but we put it in writing. Most companies in our industry will never put a thing in writing because they can't back up their word.
I love it.
Many, not all of them, but that would be my advice. That would be my advice.
I feel like I'm interviewing myself here a little bit. That's
well, I'll tell you one thing. I want your listeners to know that each one, you go, man, how did this guy figure all this out? Because every one of them has been some painful, expensive lesson, right? And you go, man, I'm not going to do that again. I told you, we're all going to have problems. Some of your solutions, your problems just come from the pain of mistakes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I love it.
Good questions.
That was one of our core values was, our job was roofing, but we're here to solve problems. You got to solve problems and think ahead. What are the coming problems? How do we not experience these problems again? How can we get in front of it? And I love that. That was always my pay structure is we're going to pay a base that's comparable to the market. Make sure you got your bills paid. You're comfortable at the base. But then we put together a performance-based incentive that is the win-win. If you help us win, we're going to share with you. And if you don't help us win, life gets hard for all of us. So it builds that incentive to win, to go out and kill it. And yeah, good stuff. Well, I know you talked a little bit there about culture. You mentioned earlier, we wanted to come back to it. You said you never delegate culture. What type of a culture do you try to cultivate, and how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, so my business, I've never, ever come to work, and I mean that. I love what I do. I've been very blessed to actually get to do and find what I love to do. And what I do is I get groups of people to work together to a common goal to where they can thrive and be successful. And that started a long time ago. I mean, when you're in a huddle with 10 other guys, you're leading a group of people toward a common goal. And my common goal was not to get killed. And so, and my faith and trust were in those other 10 guys that they were going to help be aligned with my goal. So I learned at an early age, that's what I do. And that's what I love to do. From a personal belief system, I believe that I believe that there's an order to this world. Okay. And it's all around us and we can see it in the physical, just like gravity. And if you don't believe in that natural law of gravity, Eric and I want to see you jump off a 2-story building. And we're all for you. If you can fly, that's great. But we have a lot of evidence that says, probably not. Right. And there's so many physical, natural law examples in the world. There's got to be an order to this world. Or you believe that it just somehow all fell into place and all fits together out of chaos. And so, my simple little brain thinks that, hey, there's probably order to it. There are also those things unseen. And so in our organization, we start from an understanding that people who tend to do good things happen. And people who choose get rich quick, a win-lose agreement, if you want to go really dark, people who choose dishonest or evil things, they just never seem to get ahead. Okay. And it's not transactional, right? It's over time.
Mm-hmm.
And so
they might win for a period
of
time, but it catches up to them.
Exactly. So, and this is not new stuff. It goes back to Plato and Aristotle, 4000 BC. It's called natural law. And it's evolved and it's become different. And somewhere around 1000 BC, there was quite an article written by a pope from the Catholic Church about natural law. And so there's something to that. And our choice here, Covey says, think win-win, right? Choose the right thing, do the right thing. Our culture starts here. Do your best, do the right thing, and treat people fairly. From there, there's behavior. Show up on time, do what you say you're going to do, follow through, say please and thank you. Our why is to make lives better. We do it 4 different ways. We do it 1, by serving each other. 2, by focusing on progress, not perfection. We are not a yell and scream environment. My dad taught me a lot of really good things, but he brought back from the Army a drill sergeant mentality and a voice level that came with it. We are not a yell and scream environment here. The third thing we're going to do is we're going to help you develop. We're going to train. We're going to break you down into 2 types of team members. Are you a can't or a won't? If you're a can't, we're going to train you up. That's our job. We're your leader. We have to make sure you can do the job. If we know you know how to do the job and you're a won't, I'm sorry, we're going to trade you to the competition. We don't fire anybody. They make a decision to play on another team. And then the 4th thing we have to do, I mentioned this about Bill Pollard at ServiceMaster. One of their key components at ServiceMaster was to grow profitably, not because profit was the goal of Wall Street, but because it's the way that we reinvest in the company to live our why. And our why is to make lives better for our team members first, customers second, vendors third. And that's our culture. And it's on a laminated sheet. They have to bring it to every training meeting along with something to write notes on. And I have a 40-page employee manual, but everything you need to know about being successful in our company is on one side of a piece of paper. And that's it.
Love it. That's fantastic. That is very similar to my company's values and what we did internally training people. That's fantastic. So, well, you mentioned there reinvesting in the company. We talked a little bit earlier with your accounting background and knowing your numbers. What was your approach to capital reinvestment? How do you view that? Or what kind of a percentage did you reinvest? What kind of things do you reinvest in?
Yeah, I think number one, we're always asking the question, what can we do better for our team? What portion can we reinvest in our team? I think we're at the phase where we're making stronger commitments to key leaders because we're on a scaling phase to go. We have about 17 trucks. I think I mentioned to you 30 team members. We're on our way. We do a little over 5 million in revenue. And I always say this about growth. We want to be best at something before we're biggest. But we're on our way to 10 million over the next 3 to 5 years. If we're not growing the company, then we're not creating internal career paths and opportunities. Can't promote within if you don't have something to promote them to, right? And so we have a competitive environment. We're trying to secure those leadership positions that we know we need for that next level. So the short answer is we save our coins to reinvest in the future in our people. And so, we're paying it forward a little bit to that position to help incentivize them to get to that, give them a reason to learn new things, right? Give them a reason to stretch. And we're not always able to promote from within. Scaling means we might need a new capability at that next level. We might, because of my accounting background, I probably need to, the tool metaphor, I probably need to let go of the computer at some point and have a controller. But, technology leverages that. We'll know when that happens, but that's probably something we need to invest in. So we reserve capital for future investment. And that could be assets too. It could be trucks. It could be infrastructure. Also, we're vertically integrating the business. So, and what I mean by that is, at what point do we own our building instead of rent it? If we get to a point where we can invest our capital, now we're starting to build a legacy. Man, one of the greatest strategies you brought up, exit strategy. I did do mergers and acquisitions. I did a lot of due diligence, like you talked about. The best business models I saw were when people own their building and lease the building back to the company that bought their company. I mean, that is mailbox money right there. That is brilliant.
Good stuff. That's where I'm sitting right
Yeah.
now. So
Good for you.
good stuff. Is there a lesson that you wish you would have learned earlier?
What would I tell my younger self? First of all, I don't want to promote my book, but I've gotten this question a number of times. My book, the first 3 weeks, is a narrative between a sage business owner and a solopreneur. And they said, "Hey, are you Evan or are you Carl?" And I said, "I'm both." And so if you really want to, I don't need to tease the book, but if you want to know what I would say for over 3 weeks to myself, younger self, there it is. Here's what I would tell you from a spiritual standpoint. I was scared to death at 20. I didn't come from a lot of money. I'm a little emotional about it. It was very serious for me to move from where I was. What I would say to that younger 20-year-old is, it's going to be okay. There's a plan. Just keep working hard, work on what you have control over, and it's going to work out. And it did. Eric, you just did it to me. Way to go. Let me clear up a little bit. That's what I would tell people. If you know you work hard and you have a belief system and you choose to do the right thing, it may not monetarily work in the moment. Don't think transactional, but don't give up. Keep working, keep swinging. And I think over time, if you choose the right thing, the good thing, I think there's an order to the world where you'll be rewarded. It may not be you'll be Bill Gates, but you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
That's my answer.
Oh, man, there's some wisdom there. There's good advice there. So, is there an opinion you once held strongly that you've changed based on your experience?
Yeah, I think I was way too quickly dismissive of somebody's work ethic or their culture or their belief system. And I learned to be more patient and realize that sometimes the problem's not the problem's the way somebody's looking at the problem, and I should spend more time introducing a new way to look at an old problem than being dismissive that it's a character flaw in somebody. What I've learned over time is I've seen some really, really talented, sharp people develop in our company, and they don't hold the same belief system that they did 10 years ago or 5 years ago. I think early on, I could have done a better job of not being, I'm saying dismissive, but in my mind going, oh, that person's this, or this person doesn't have that ethic or that character piece that's so necessary. Over time, I realized I can't change people, but I can model something that maybe they haven't seen before. And just to be a little more patient. Slow and steady wins the race.
Good stuff. The tortoise and the hare
Yeah.
every time. Well, if you could start all over, go back to coming out of college and do something different, would you, or what would you do differently?
I almost died in 2014. I was on an O2 bag for 45 minutes. Didn't see any light, but I had a peace and a calm that came over me. And it was one of those moments where, afterwards, people, I'll just let you know, I'm going to fast forward through the story. I wake up in the ER room after 45 minutes and there are 9 people and they're looking at me like, and the look on their face was like, you were almost dead. You were dead. And you could just see it on their face. And I would get a lot of questions from friends. Hey, has that changed your life? Has that changed you in any way? I was 14, that would have been. Yeah, I was probably close to 50, somewhere in there, I think. May have got the math wrong on that. He said, what would you do different? And I said, you know what? It hasn't changed a thing. I'm going to continue to live the life I have. It affirmed it. But one thing I don't do anymore is I don't equivocate, or if there's something to be said that I believe somebody needs to hear in encouragement, in my support, in my love for them, both in family and business, at times I probably was a little more political and go, you know what, I'm probably not going to do that. From that point on, I've never held back. Now I've learned to be hold back on some things that are rolling around in my head that probably should stay there, but I don't equivocate. So if I looked back, I would say to myself, man, if you have a thought about somebody you have a connection with that you think they need encouragement, or you should take some time, or you should not leave anything to risk about somebody knowing how you feel about them, how committed you are to them, do not let that sit in your head. They need that. That feeling is there. That emotion is there. That might be the one thing that makes their life just a little bit easier and keeps them from doing something that might be extreme. And so I wish that I had learned that lesson sooner. And I'm not proud that it took me almost dying to learn it. So that was a really good question.
Great.
I don't think I would have come up with that in any other way. So I really don't talk a lot about it because people are going, oh man, did you see a light? Or sorry, I didn't get any of that. But I will tell you this, everything slowed down. I had a peace and a calm that came over me like I can't even explain. My only regret at the moment was, and because I'm telling you, Eric, I went into anaphylactic shock. I couldn't breathe. And I knew it was over in my mind. My only regret was I wasn't going to be able to say goodbye to people I loved and cared about. So those are the lessons. That's a big one.
There's a lot of wisdom there, and man, you're full of nuggets of wisdom today. This is going to be a great interview. I appreciate it.
You're just a great interview. That's what you are.
What mistake has cost you the most money?
Whew. Taking come on, $1 million.
Yeah.
We already covered that. I'm sorry. I can't give you a better one than that.
That tops the list.
I took my eye off the ball.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
when I took over the business, my dad always told me, dance with the girl that brought you. That I think as entrepreneurs, we can get that squirrel ADD. There's always something better. I want to do this. I want to do that. You talked about kind of ignoring the business because you were speaking and coaching and doing all of that. And that business that provides the foundation for your income, it deserves your full attention.
Yeah,
So,
I can look back at that. I really want to make the point. The $1 million, that was a lot of money. But what's the cost of losing a marriage? Your kids not turning out well because you just didn't spend the right time, didn't make the right choices. That's far more costly than a debt you had in the business.
yeah,
So, yeah.
absolutely. And I have found in my own life anyway, when you get your priorities in order, things work. When you put your family first, my business tends to thrive. When I allow the business to come over my family, I struggle. It was difficult. The problems in the family arose that created problems at work. And when I get my priorities in the right order, when marriage comes first and kids comes first, and then the business, like life just went better. That my business thrived when it was priority number 3 or 4 rather than when it was priority 1 or 2. Has that
Isn't
been
that
true for
crazy
you?
how that works though?
Yeah.
I mean, I just think reflection. I personally like to do it early in the morning at 61. How old are you, Eric?
I'm only 37. So,
Yeah, Eric, I've been 37. You've never been 61. I'm going to tell you, I've always gotten up early, but there's a new definition of early now because I will wake up at 4:30 or 5, and I just like that quiet time in the moment in the morning. But having some kind of consistent looking at what you're doing, not always doing, and I call it quiet time, and there's a preparation there, it just seems to set your brain. And, when you're starting to get to a point where you think there isn't enough time for anything, that's when you really need to sit down and look at what you're doing because it's not that there isn't time to do, it's what are we choosing to do? And when our brain is clear about our priorities, I think we just make better decisions day in and day out with our interaction with the people, our business, and everything. I mean, we're kind of drifting off the business discussion, but they're they're intertwined for sure.
yeah. Well, and when you get the priorities right, I'm going to go back to what you said. I think it's pretty evident there are natural laws that within this creation, within the world, there are things that come together. And when I put some boundaries around my business and put my family and my priorities first, I was working less and finding more success.
Yep.
Those 80, 90-hour weeks when everything was frantic and everything was on fire and I had to do the business and family had to suffer, I found less success there than when I said, this is what I have to give. These are my boundaries. I will give 100% in this time or at this time. And then I have to go take care of what's important. My business thrived more with those boundaries than when it was the number one priority.
Yeah, I think I want to add to that, and I said I wouldn't talk much about the coaching I do, but my position statement is I work with a community of skilled trades owners that want to scale and grow their business without compromising their values. And I think the time we've spent together, the reason I want to say that is I said it's a small group of people. That's a unique person, right? It's a small group that wants to achieve that. And because we've spent so much time talking, it makes sense because it all starts with your belief system and who you want to be. And here's the thing about skilled trades. I think most really good skilled trade technicians, their core is they want to make lives better for their customers. They want to do a good, honest job. And there's plenty of white noise out there about get rich quick, about the path is you need heavy marketing, you need to upsell, you need to close them 7 times. And I'm just telling you, that's what we're hearing. We go this way. And And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's as simple as gravity.
Yeah.
And my clients sometimes go, I had no idea how simple or how easy this was. And you're saying the same thing. I get the culture set. We get our processes in place. I'm working less. I'm achieving more.
Yeah.
And I don't mean just financially. I'm growing an organization that's thriving and living without me. And I'm not the answer to every problem. It's the most liberating thing in the world.
Oh, it is. And I think the caveat, when you're growing a business, starting a business, there's going to be the 80-hour weeks, the 90-hour weeks. Like there are times when you have that problem
Absolutely.
that you have to solve, you put in the work. But if the 80-hour work week is the norm for you, if that's every week to the detriment of everything around you, that's a problem. And eventually the cracks are going to show. Um, building a business, you said it's hard work. It's a lot of hard work. I heard a quote recently, entrepreneurs are the only people on earth that will work 80 hours to avoid working 40. There's a lot of work that's involved there and it's hard work. But if that's the norm, if that's every week, and if it's to the detriment of everything around you, you're not serving your business well. You have to take care of first priorities first. And I see businesses thrive more when the owners take care of their families and themselves first, and then the business comes after that.
It
So,
changes who you are.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah. What has been your biggest win as a leader?
My marriage and my kids doing so well. I have my son, both son and daughter were college athletes. My daughter was a D1 academic All-American. My son just amazed me. And they're thriving right now. They're working and getting their MBAs. They have a great work ethic, a marriage of almost 28 years. It's just that's it. I it's not selling a company. It's not being a CEO of a corporation. And it, I hope that these next 20 years that I spend, because I've got a 20-year plan, and is helping other business owners achieve that. The one thing about my coaching is if you've been with me more than 3 years, let's say we take you at that, you're in that 80% bucket. If in 3 years we're not real close to owning a business, I've failed you and you need to fire me. My goal is not for them to continue to need me, but to learn what they need to do to stay there and move on. And my goal is if there's something second to what I just told you, biggest accomplishment would be a fraternity of owners that would buy in and and have some of the joy and satisfaction and hear about their kids doing so well and that kind of thing. So
Yeah, good stuff.
one of my regrets is that I never saw your business in action because it sounds like it was a great company.
They're still going and still doing well, but yeah, I think you and I would get along really well. We seem to share a lot of values and strategy even. So, was there a turning point in your career? I know you mentioned you came from pretty humble beginnings and kind of that was a big adjustment to make. Was there a point where you were able to kind of take a sigh of relief and like I've made it. I've got a level of comfort, a level of success. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
There were certain stages where I would take stock in where I was and certainly felt more at peace about some financial things or things are heading the right direction. But to be totally authentic with you, I have a plan and it's to get to the next bend in the river. And I've always been motivated off of 90-day plans and goals and those types of things. So there's something in me that continues to go, hey, we can get a little further down the road. And that's what I want to share. You didn't ask this question, but a guy named Dan Sullivan, the strategic coach, I went to him in my 90s as well. And he has this illustration called the gap. You could probably look it up on YouTube and find it. But Dan says that there are three different positions in your progress. There's where you came from, there's where you are, and there's where you want to be. And he calls that where you want to be the horizon line. And so no matter how hard or how fast we run to the horizon line, there's a new horizon, right? So, but there's a danger in only looking forward because that's the negative area, right? It's always a critical parent in your head saying, gosh, I'm not there. I'm not there yet. I'm not. And it's not like that for me. And the best way to get out of that is go take stock 5 years ago and where you were and where you are today. And the positive comes from where you've come from and the progress you've made. And however you want to measure that, if that's financially or emotionally, spiritually, whatever. But you also have to get reconciled that successful people are always moving forward toward the horizon line. But if they don't realize that that horizon line keeps moving, that's when you become psychotic,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there were stages that I look back and went, man, I'm not where I was, and I'm glad I'm not there. And I've made some progress, but don't lose your mind over not being there.
Yeah.
I think you and I would say, hey, look, I have huge admiration, some envy in our pre-call that you live in Wyoming and can go fly fishing anytime you want. You look out. If you come to Dallas, Texas, Eric, it's not the same scenery. It's pretty flat and a lot of buildings, okay? Great place to make a living, but it's not Wyoming, right? Just, there are a lot of things around us that we take for granted that are huge blessings.
Yeah.
So
I love it.
I know I didn't answer your question. I think I just rambled on about that, but there's something in there.
That's great. I think there's something to that though. I knew when I chose to come start or continue a business and live my life in Wyoming, there were some limitations. We're a small community. There's some economic limitations, but it was where I wanted to live. And I go to places like Dallas and I look around and I'm like, oh my gosh, if somebody showed up here with a little bit of capital, the opportunity is unlimited. There's just development happening. There's new businesses. There's people. There's the economic movement is massive. But I chose to live at great fly fishing.
I got to tell you a story. I know where the intersection was. It's Highway 635 and Coit Road. And I think I had been here for 6 months. I grew up in a town of less than 1,000 people. I was not a farm boy. I was a small town boy in Illinois. And the largest place I'd ever been was where I went to school. And I think there was 25, 30,000 people there. Not terribly large. It was in Arkansas. I remember sitting in my truck watching cars go like crazy around me and people waving their hands and screaming and I had this very surreal moment. It's like we all remember things in our lives. I'm going, what have I done and why am I here? I mean, there are just those moments, right?
What advice would you have for a young person today that wants to do what you've done, that wants to build a business in the home services sector, that wants to be successful, that wants to aspire to great leadership and become what you've become?
Yeah, some of the advice I gave throughout this conversation, don't take a job for money, take a job for what you can learn. And I have 5 people that have come through our business that own their own business. And they call me all the time. And I'm not running a prison here. If somebody's ready to go start a business, I'll do everything I can to help them. But make sure that you've got the basic tools to own and run a business. Hey, you need technically to understand how to do the job. You need some leadership experience. You need some management experience. If you can get some office experience and understand systems and processes, don't ever steal from somebody. but tell them, hey, look, I want to learn this. I want to grow. One of the things I always tell folks is that if you interview for a job and don't get it, ask them why and why did they pick somebody else? Or could you work for free for 30 days? And if you can prove that you can do the job, can you have it? And will you pay me for the work that I did if I did it well? I mean, and just say, look, I don't have a job right now. And if I find one, I'll take it. But I'd like to show you that I actually can do this for you. I work hard. I show up on time. I do what I say I'm going to do and I follow through. And I'm going to do my best and do the right thing and treat you fairly. I bet you if they really have that position, Eric, I know you as a business owner, that'd turn your head, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe don't go 30 days. Give them a week. See, let me interview by helping you. When I leave, I learn something. You get free work. How can that not work? Eric, that's hard to say no to.
Yeah.
I always say it's not over until you say it's over. And that's not a hard close. It's just, oh, what are you going to do for next week while you're interviewing for another job? Because you don't have this one.
Yeah.
Learn something from it, right? So, have a plan. The squirrel analogy, I love that. One of the reasons that small business people fail, and we talked about misappropriation or mismanagement of cash, lack of a sales plan. Some just don't have the experience ready to do the job and they don't have a plan.
Awesome. Well, I know in addition to running your successful business, you also have your book. We've talked about that a little bit, 30 Days to a Better Business, and you run the Better Business program. Who are those products tailored towards, and what can they expect to get out of it?
Sure, that book was written for what I was telling my younger self, and it's done in a narrative style. So it's 30 days to a better business, and it's broken down into 1,200 word chapters and about 31 chapters. So each week is a theme, and the first one is sales, because sales covers a multitude of sins. The second one is leadership, because that's the next thing you really need to have an understanding on to scale your business and team the business. And then the third week is planning. The fourth week, if I get you to read that far, maybe they'll work through the accounting piece. They'll probably put the book down and then come back to it later and read week 4. I don't know. Average book, people don't read past the third chapter, but the fourth week is about accounting, KPIs, finance. It's the stuff that's real textbook like.
Okay.
The first 3 weeks are in a narrative. It's a storyline between an older established business owner and a solopreneur. So those things are highlighted at the end of each chapter. There's a challenge and some bullet points and some things to think about. What's the one thing you could do tomorrow in light of this thing right here, or what happened to this character? And then the fifth week is about what successful or great companies have in common. And they do. They have a great client experience. They have a great sales and marketing process. They have a great HR or team member process. They have great numbers. I mean, these are things that every great company has, and it's almost like gravity. It's a natural law. It's what you have to get there. And then if you make it that far, there's an epilogue in the back, and I'll tell you exactly where my heart is and why I'm doing this and what I believe in.
Awesome. And
Yeah.
so I know you do some coaching as well, and you have the Better Business program. Who is going to be the best fit for your Better Business program and your coaching? Who's your ideal client?
We're looking for folks that either are quickly moving to what I call the messy middle. And the messy middle is the third phase of scaling a business. The numbers can change. I don't know what it would be in roofing, but it's when the owner is hitting a ceiling of complexity where things are getting a little out of control for them. They can't They can't seem to have their hands on everything. Here's the true tale of the messy middle. It's when you are half the size and you are making twice the amount of money than you are right now. Okay. And those are different. That's an area. That's where you might be close to bankruptcy. You might be stuck. You may be contemplating going back and making your business smaller back when you could control it and understand it. We move those contractors and owners, small business owners, to a 3-day retreat with us. And if you want to talk to me about that, go to my website. You'll get a free 30, 40-minute conversation. It'll be just like this, Eric. It's just like, what's your pain point? What are you working on? Right. You'll know, I'll know if you want to work with me. If not, I'm going to give you 2 or 3 things to go away and implement in your business. And you get that free. I'll give you an e-version of my book for that conversation. What we do is we take it there. The big back end is I work with a mastermind group clients that we meet every week and they talk about their business. But what's neat about that is that group is a community of believers. And I know you would understand this. If you're a small business owner, you can't talk to your buddy who works at the factory about the struggles and challenges you have.
Yeah.
Mastermind thing is something that came out in the 1920s where it's a process where we share our biggest problem in our business, and you get the strength of 10 other people or 20 other people in the room going, hey, and it's a controlled process. I had that same problem. This is what I did. So you start learning from the best practices from everybody.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that mastermind also gets in the back end. They get everything I do in my business. I'm not hiding this under a bowl. I give it to you. You will save what you pay to be a part of that mastermind on your marketing expense alone, because a lot of the marketing products that we have and that we do, we give it to you with your logo on it. So the way we move to that in between is we have a 3-day retreat. So basically, you can call me, we'll talk for 30, 40 minutes, and you can go off and do it by yourself. Or in the 3-day retreat, we do it together. We talk about sales, leadership, and business planning, and you're ready to go, and then you can do it on your own. Or I give you and do it for you in the back end, the mastermind. So that's that small group that we talk about.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. It's tortoise and the hare, man. It's not a get rich quick. It's not me telling you, hey, you just need to go close the customer more. We're coming from that natural law. But I will tell you up front, that's a program to move you from working with me to not needing me anymore, because that's the goal.
Yeah.
The goal is you shouldn't need me, or you shouldn't need my coaching. You might give me a call, but I'm not going to charge you for it. I'm going, look, you've already done it. And it can happen for you. It really can.
Good stuff.
Sometimes these things just need a little tweak.
Yeah.
You
That's great stuff.
Little tweaks can mean big things.
That's kind of the heart behind this show is, yeah, like you said, if you own a business and run a business, most people, especially if you're in a smaller area, your peer group doesn't get it. It can be very lonely, whether you're really struggling and have some big problems or even have some awesome success, you can't tell your bowling buddy that. They can't relate. They don't get it.
No.
It seems like you're complaining or bragging when you're just trying to share life. And so getting around like-minded people and hearing from people that have been through similar struggles and had similar wins, that month that you make more money than you've ever imagined you could make before and you're excited about it. You can't tell your buddy that works for a salary about that.
No, and Eric, I maybe you're the one who's never had that problem. I don't want to assume this, but when I talk to you about the challenges of cash and making payroll and paying out of a different pocket for somebody because you had a team member that needed a new set of tires, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
It's a fraternity of people. And so people think they join for me to coach and give them the nuggets, and I do, and I help them and I talk through their business. But what happens with this community is it's a group of people that they don't ever want to leave.
Yeah.
You know, some of these folks travel and vacation together. I mean, it's special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, if somebody wants to get a hold of your book or wants to engage you for coaching or become part of one of your mastermind groups, what's the best way to get a hold of you or get a hold of those resources?
Yeah. So it's real simple. You go to brentgarrett.com or theskilledtradescoach.com. Either one, you can find me, connect. You'll hit a button that says connect. Might ask a few questions to add a little bit more to that conversation we have. And you'll book a 30, 40-minute conversation with me. I'm not going to sell you a thing. I'm going to talk about what your big problems are. And I'll tell you what I do, but it's all focused on helping you with a few good ideas about what that next bend in the river is. And man, maybe we make the trade business a little easier to understand, a little more successful. And I'll give you an e-version of the book. I'm a big believer that I read a little bit of scripture. Bread cast upon the water comes back tenfold. I don't do what I do because I'm going to get something for it. I just know that there's this natural order of the world that if you help enough people get where they want to go, you do too. So that's it. I say just go to the website, book a conversation with me. You'll talk to a really nice lady named Kate. She'll find a time on the calendar for us to talk, and you get some free stuff and some free advice and a couple things maybe to help your business. That's how you get in touch with me.
Good stuff. Well, we'll include all of that in the show notes so listeners can just click on a link there and get right to your page, get right in touch with you quick. This is my favorite question that I ask of every guest. Are you a person of a particular faith tradition? And if so, how has that affected your leadership and your career?
Yes, I am a person of faith. I am a Christian. I was raised in the Catholic Church. I'm a Protestant now. I go to a Methodist church here in Plano, Texas. I contemplated going into the ministry when I was in college. I realized that that wasn't my calling, but the church needed strong lay people. I made a decision, when I was in college to choose a path that was not what I learned at home. And that's made all the difference in the world. And I will tell you that while I'm a Christian, I don't pretend to understand how this world is put together, but I know there's an order to it. I talk to you about natural law. I think something or somebody somewhere created this, and it's okay if we don't completely understand it. And I don't know the path or all the paths to understand that. But for me, the path that I found led me to a deeper understanding of that. And so that's my belief system. I'm a big believer in this concept of grace. I don't believe that that creator is connected with us because of what we do, but it's out of a free gift given to us. And the way we repay that is not because we owe it. It was freely given. That insults the giver. It is because we believe in that we share it. And that's my belief system.
Good stuff. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I know
Good question.
you mentioned you have a 20-year plan. Can you give us a little insight? What is next? You've built multiple businesses. You've been a CEO and a corporate officer for large public companies. You've bought and sold countless companies for others. What's next? Where do you go from here?
If you have listeners that are in the 45 to 60 range, I want them to turn the volume up, okay? Because COVID taught me some stuff and I think I became aware of some things. I started looking around me. I'm at a stage in my life where my friends are retiring. And I told you I love what I do. And one of the things that I found that keeps me young is working with younger people. Okay. It keeps me relevant. But what I'm seeing is in some of my friends, who might be retired, not all of them, just some observations, that they were really successful at the top level of their businesses and their lives. When I'm talking about that, I'm talking about I make up the bottom half that makes their top half possible. Okay. These are really successful people, but some retire and some don't have a purpose. And what I've realized, you talked about that horizon line. I've got a 20-year plan. I got a lot of stuff I want to do. My challenge to that 45 to 60 group is if you love what you do until you know what you want to do next, don't quit doing it because it adds purpose to your life. I think it keeps you young and it keeps you in some habits that are probably a little healthier. And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Good stuff and good advice. Is there somebody that you'd like to see on this show? Somebody with an interesting background and interesting business that you'd like to learn more about?
That's a great question. I'm going through my Rolodex in my head of folks. Yeah, I'll give you one. A gentleman named Warren Lentz. He is in Austin, Texas. One of the sharpest and progressive business minds I've met in the last 10 years. He runs a staffing company for skilled trades. And I just think he has a very unique background. I think he has a very interesting life story. And I respect him a lot. And I think it would be a great conversation with Warren. I respect him a lot.
Awesome.
And he does a lot of our staffing for our company and has done a tremendous job. And that's how I met him. To that point, you know, you meet other business owners and you strike and we've shared business models and talked. And I just think he'd be a great guy for you to talk to.
Wonderful. Well, I might see if you can make an introduction here in the next couple days and see if we can get him on.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yep. 100%.
Well, our last question to either fuel or settle the debate, as somebody that spent a career in the services industry, if you have a job to do that requires a cordless tool, which brand do you prefer?
I'd have to say Milwaukee. I mean, I think we have 2 or 3 installed trucks with Milwaukee pack outs and all that stuff. I will say that 90% of the things that we buy in terms of tools, equipment, supplies are with the largest supplier for plumbing and air conditioning. It's Ferguson Supply. You probably heard of them. And man, we get Milwaukee tool flyers all the time. And that's what, the way I said that is like, gosh, I'm not on the tools anymore. And at 61, power tools probably don't need to be in my hands, but all the guys have Milwaukee tools. So that's probably what I would say.
All right. Good stuff. Well, Brent, thank you so much for joining me today. You are a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to share that with us. So thank you.
I have thoroughly enjoyed this. Thanks for having me on. You run a really well-run professional podcast, and I can tell you put a lot of preparation into it. Thank you so much. Hope you'll have me back sometime.
Yeah, that'd be great. We might have to get an update on your 20-year plan here in a year or so.
Thanks a lot, Eric.
Yeah. And thank you guys for joining us here on From the Ground Up Show. Again, if you want to support the show, like, share, follow, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, YouTube, or social media. If you can leave us a 5-star review or a comment, that is greatly appreciated. And don't forget to check out our merch store at shop.fromthegroundupshow.com. Until next time, keep grinding.